Welcome to the Fast Leader Podcast, where we explore convenient yet effective shortcuts that will help you get ahead and move forward faster by becoming a better leader. And now, here's your host, customer and employee engagement expert, and certified emotional intelligence practitioner, Jim Rimbach.
Need a powerful and entertaining way to ignite your next conference, retreat, or team building session? My keynotes don't include magic, but they do have the power to help your attendees take a leap forward by putting emotional intelligence into their employee engagement, and customer-centric leadership practices. So bring the infotainment creativity of the Fast Leader Show to your next event, and I'll help your attendees get over the hump now. Go to beyondmorale.com/speaking to learn more. Okay, Fast Leader Legion, we're going to have a good show today because the guest that I have gives a very unique perspective on some of the things that are affecting both our job and our life. Carey Azzara started life in Bellevue, New Jersey. By the time he was 3, he was spending as much time in Newark with a grandmother and 2 aunts as he was at home. His newborn sister had been diagnosed with a rare blood disease, thalassemia. It changed his life dramatically. Carey often says life is not a straight path. His life has had many twists and turns. Losing his only sister when he was 16, he struggled to regain direction. Withdrawn, he focused on schoolwork and was an honor student through his 4 years of high school. He entered Rutgers University, joined a fraternity, and thought about a career in medicine, but it was not to be. His only motivation to be in college was to avoid going to war. However, even that was not even enough to sustain his interest in academia. Luckily for him, the war ended before he was drafted. It would be a couple of years before he found a path back to completing his education. Since then, he has accomplished goals such as the pursuit of 2 graduate degrees, a career in public health, VP of Market Research, and president of a marketing company. During his career in market research and as an internet marketer, he published numerous articles, reports, and books. Along the way, an unhappy marriage ended in divorce, and he met and married his current wife of nearly 25 years. He and his wife, Patrice, raised a blended family. They also rescued a few dogs. A few years back, he contemplated retirement. He downsized his collection of classic cars and began writing short stories about the cars he owned. His life experiences have inspired him to continue writing and broadening his story plots well beyond cars. Carey is the author of The Lottery Curse, a book published by Something or Other Publishing of literary fiction that shines bright lights on the dangers that befall even the best-intentioned lottery winner. Carey currently lives in a suburb of Boston, Massachusetts, where he and his family have resided for over 20 years. Carey Azzara, are you ready to help us get over the hump?
Yes, I am.
Thanks, Carey. You know, I've given our listeners a little bit about you, but can you tell us what your current passion is so that we can get to know you even better?
Well, the current passion is about writing, and the marketing has to be done, but the real passion is around the writing and the editing. Editing is something that in the early stages of my career, I looked upon as kind of a thing I had to do. Now I look upon it as something that actually helps me make the story better, and I actually enjoy it.
Now, one of the things that found me interesting, and one of the reasons why I had you on the show, because reading about, your life and your story and where you've come from and your background in market research, which a lot of the folks that are both guests as well as listeners on the Fast Leader Show get exposure through their, customer experience and customer care work. I mean, I think to me, you have become an expert in a lot of different ways around human behavior and why people do the things that they do and why they shouldn't do certain things.
I'd like to think that's true. I'd like to think that not only my life experiences, but my career and the work I did in marketing research and also in research prior to that in public health, and the fact that I grew up in a very large Italian family, all of which have kind of combined to give me a appreciation for the human condition.
So when you start thinking about putting those worlds together and being able to tell a story to engage people, what do you think are some of the elements that you focus in on that essentially for you knows that it's going to work?
It comes down to characters. I don't write a lot of fiction around, high-tech things. I don't write about, vampires and going to worlds that don't exist. So for me, it's about the relationships, and the passion I have is the thing I've been told I'm reasonably good at is dialogue. So I try to focus a lot on, understanding the motivations for each character, getting an idea of how they fit into the story. Sometimes that happens as you're writing. Sometimes it's something you plan ahead and outline. A lot of times I will write bios for each character before I actually start, writing the plot through. And in doing that, I hope to bring the characters alive and the relationships they have with the other characters in the story.
That's the part that's really fascinating to me, because in a lot of the work that, people that I know do, they're doing and building personas. They build personas so that they make sure that they're marketing and telling stories to those particular people in order to gauge them to do business with their brands, buy their products and services, and maybe even be interested in some of their new product launches. So when you start thinking about actually building that persona piece, how do you go through that process?
I start with the very basics. I start with demographics. Is this a man or a woman? How old is this person? What's their eye color? What hair color do they have? And what's their complexion? And then, I try to build from that core, what their family looks like. Are they a single child in their family? Were they the third child, the middle child? And you build out from there, because those are, very crucial building blocks for anybody's personality. And you, I think, can appreciate better as an author, as you're trying to develop that character, where they might go, what they might do or say, once you have a sense of kind of where they came from.
It's also critically important when you start talking about being able to identify your customer and be more customer-centric. When you start talking about serving them and being able to connect with them when you're interacting them and the different touch points that an organization has with them. And you write in your recent book about the lottery curse, about the windfall of winning money and having, as you say, a sudden, you had mentioned that, a sudden windfall of having cash. So for me, I also think about the sudden windfall of people within an organization when it comes to now being given or getting the opportunity to become a leader, now given the opportunity to manage a particular project or an organization. So what are some of the things that happens when somebody has that sudden windfall that causes them not to be successful with it?
Well, let me go back a step and just comment first on the idea that as you're trying to think about your customers, you're actually, very right, Jim. You really want to create a persona of that customer and understand not just what they might buy, but what the motivations for that purchase is. What's going to bring them to the table, if you will. With respect to becoming a leader, as someone hands you. Presumably you've earned it, right? The right to take on the next level of leadership. I think what I tried to do in my career is to find people who are smarter than me to work with. If you have the opportunity to hire people, don't hire people who are Bs. If you're an A, don't hire Bs. If you're a B, don't hire Cs. Just always try to find somebody who can teach you things, can bring value to the team that you're hopefully going to lead in a way that is expands upon maybe the perspectives that you have.
So that is interesting. So in the book, The Lottery Curse, you talked about a couple different folks that actually received this windfall. How did they not do those things?
It turns out that people who receive a windfall specifically from the lottery, but it could be other sources, if they haven't had the experience of managing large amounts of money, really dealing with finances other than a week-to-week paycheck, then they I don't know, something goes awry in their brain, and they just want to explode, buy things. Do things that they never had the opportunity to do before. And they very rarely, there are exceptions certainly, but they very rarely step back and let some time pass and stay with where they are and the people who are successful don't explore things too quickly. They sit back and they don't tell a lot of people about their newfound wealth. Turns out that it's not just the wealth and the fact that you now can afford a $2 million house instead of the $30,000 home you had before. It's your whole social network changes. The people that you were associating with, you don't fit with them anymore, and they don't really feel comfortable around you. And the people that you might think you would fit with, the other millionaires in the community, no, you don't really fit with them either, because you came into the money too very quickly.
I think for me, I find a very, as I mentioned, and why I wanted to have you on the show and why I find it so interesting is I find a direct connection to people who automatically come into power and people who automatically come into money.
I think there are definitely some parallels. I think there are different kinds of dangers and trapdoors that you have to be careful of. But I think you're right. There are definitely parallels. And
so for me, even when you were going through and talking about that, somebody who came into that sudden windfall, I pulled out a couple things from folks who have, actually come into that position of power, within an organization. Pause.
Right.
Be mindful. It is seek other help and support. Don't think that you know it all. Understand the strengths of those that are around you, and be prepared to be in an odd position in the in-between state between those senior level folks and those ones that you just, I don't want to say left behind, but the ones that now report to you that were your peers previously.
Yeah, I think we have this notion that is, if we, are put into a leadership role, that suddenly everybody expects us to know everything, expects us to be perfect in what we're going to do, and yes, they are looking to you for, what are we going to do next, boss? But at the same time, I think there is a realization that you have to grow into that role, and I think people do appreciate the fact that you're asked their opinion. You're genuinely listening to what they feel they can bring to the table in whatever endeavor it is, and if you ask them to give you time, they will.
I also think too it's really interesting because I know of several folks that have wanted that, like you even say in the book, people want to win the lottery. I mean, they try desperately to do it, but they don't really think about what would happen if it occurred. Same thing when you start coming to positions of power. It seems glamorous. I want to move up. I want to have that bigger and greater responsibility, but they don't prepare and plan for when it does come, what they're supposed to do. So if you were to give a piece of advice to those that are seeking, to want to have, that position of power or even win the lottery above them, what would you tell them in order to kind of put them in a better, mindset so that they don't allow that glamour to consume them?
I would say that, and I did this, so I know it works. What I would say is go talk to people who are in the position or a similar position that you're going to assume. Go talk to that person, ask them how, and certainly it would be better if you ask somebody who you believe is successful, and go ask them what they attribute, their success to. What did they do when they had to make that transition? Learn what you can from, essentially a mentor, and someone who's gone through the steps that you are about to take.
And what we're talking about, I mean, there's so much emotion, talking about relationship and everything in what we're referring to in regards to, becoming of power, losing power, getting power and being disenchanted, money, windfall, all of those things. And a lot of times we look at quotes in order to help us on the show. Is there a quote or two that you can share that that impacts you?
Let's see. I think this might sound trite, but I get up in the morning and I put one foot in front of the other. And honestly, that's what it takes. I mean, whether you're going to be a leader or a writer, you just have to put the time in. And you have to be thoughtful, as you said earlier, but you have to really put one foot in front of the other. What I have discovered is that it's not a sprint; it's a marathon, and as people have said. And I've developed a lot of marketing capacity, a pretty good platform, a lot of social media connections. But I didn't do that overnight. I did it 20 minutes a day, day in and day out. And that's what I tell people. Look, you're not going to get there tomorrow, but if you start today and you put one foot in front of the other, you will eventually develop whatever it is you need to meet your goals.
Without a doubt. But as we go through what we're talking about, there's a lot of stops and starts and pivots and turns and realizations and mistakes that we make, and we have to get over those humps. Is there a time where you had to get over the hump and it's really made an impact on your life?
Yeah, well, as you talked about in the introduction, one of the biggest humps I had to get over was the loss of my sister at a pretty early age. And I'll tell you, it really threw me for a loop. And not just me. I mean, it wasn't just my grief, but it was watching the grief of my parents. Losing a child has got to be the single most heart-wrenching thing that anyone, I think, can probably go through in life. And so it gave me this. It just threw me and the family, my immediate family, into a collective depression. And getting over that was very hard. It was very hard. I had a grandmother. She's passed now. My mom's mom, and without her, I don't know that I would have made it. In fact, I'm dedicating the next book to her. She was a force to be reckoned with, I'll tell you, and she really did make a huge difference in getting me through a lot of the grief.
So when you start thinking about, and thanks for sharing it, I'm sorry about that, when you start thinking about, going through that and, coming out of that, and you're talking about her being strong, how did she help you do that?
My grandmother raised 6 girls during the Depression. She lost her husband to a botched surgery. He had a construction company, and she took over the construction company. So she raised 6 girls during the Depression. She ran the construction company, and she was one of the early people to learn how to drive. This was a woman who just could not be, knocked down, and she would, she did get knocked down, but she always got up. And that was the lesson she ended up teaching me. She would say to me, Carey, in life, bad things are going to happen, and you're going to get knocked down. And it's not about, whether you get knocked down or not. It's about whether you get up, brush yourself off, and move forward. And that's what I want to always see you do. And I learned that lesson from her.
Wow. What an amazing woman. When you start thinking, though, about, talking about the semi-retirement piece, and you wanted to tell me off mic that how you wanted to make sure that you were still, making an impact. You don't want to retire to the pasture, that you wanted to continue to impact and support and help and, make a difference in the world. But if you start thinking about all the things that you got going on, what's one of your goals?
Well, as I've kind of developed, more skill as a writer, I feel like what I want to impart to people in the stories I write is the importance of relationships. And I'm finishing a novel now. The title is Caitlin's Mooring, and it's about a family in Maine, and it spans 5 generations. And the story starts off with how this family ends up with some really severe challenges. Particularly there's really 3 main characters, but it starts off with a young woman who's just starting her 3rd year of college. And the idea behind the book was actually, it was inspired by a real story. Someone told me a story about her life, and the fact that for a number of reasons that I won't get into, the only person her son had as a male role model was his great grandfather. So there were 2 generations missing between he and his, and I took that kernel, and I thought that can really be a great centerpiece for understanding relationships, even when there's a big gap in the family. And so the story talks about how that gap occurred. That's the first couple of chapters, and then how the family fills that gap.
And the Fast Leader Legion wishes you the very best. Now, before we move on, let's get a quick word from our sponsor. The number one thing that contributes to customer loyalty is emotions. So move onward and upward faster by gaining significantly deeper insight and understanding of your customer journey and personas with emotional intelligence. With your empathy mapping workshop, you'll learn how to evoke and influence the right customer emotions that generate improved customer loyalty and reduce your cost to operate. Get over your emotional hump now by going to empathymapping.com to learn more. Okay, Fast Leader Legion, it's time for the Hump Day Hoedown. Okay, Carey, the Hump Day Hoedown is the part of our show where you give us good insights fast. So I'm going to ask you several questions, and your job is to give us robust yet rapid responses that are going to help us move onward and upward faster. Carey Azzara, are you ready to hoe down?
I am.
All right. So what do you think is holding you back from being an even better leader today?
I tell you, recently I've been very concerned about the direction the country's going in, and what's holding me back from being a better leader, in my case, leading my own, being the CEO of my own writing career, is that I'm very distracted with the politics. So that's kind of holding me back.
What is the best leadership advice you have ever received?
As I said earlier, hire people that are smarter than you are.
What is one of your secrets that you believe contributes to our success?
Be a plugger. Just plug away. I'm not the smartest guy, and I'm not the most handsome guy, but I plug along, and that's how I've been able to create successes in my life.
What do you feel is one of your best tools that helps you lead in business or life?
Best tools. Well, I'd like to say my wife, but I don't want to call her a tool. But I think it's the relationships I have with my family. Yeah.
What would be one book, and it could be from any genre, that you recommend to our listeners?
There's a book called I think it's 52 Laws of Power, I believe it is. But it is a little bit Machiavellian, but it actually has some very good lessons in it. And one of the lessons that I took from it was about reputation. And it was about this Chinese warrior who had the reputation for being just, enormously, fierce. And to make a long story short, he finds himself in a situation where he doesn't have the army that he needs to repel the enemy that's coming to him. So he opens the gates and sits in front of the gates on top of a chair well up above, and just sort of challenges them to come in, and it's a complete bluff. But his reputation, saves the day, and reputation can save the day, and it's easy to lose, hard to get to create, but very much worth the effort.
Okay, Fast Leader listeners, you can find links to that and other bonus information, including a link to Carey's book, The Lottery Curse, by going to the show notes page at fastleader.net/Carey Azzara. Okay, Carey, this is my last Hump Day Hold On question. Imagine you were given the opportunity to go back to the age of 25, and you've been given the opportunity to take the knowledge and skills that you have now back with you, but you can't take everything back. You can only choose one. So what skill or piece of knowledge would you take back with you, and why?
I would take back my writing skills. Now that I learned how fun it is, if I could go back to 25 and have my writing skills, I could finish all the projects I started. At this age, I'm in my 60s, so at this age, I worry about not being able to finish everything before I pass on.
Carey, it was an honor to spend time with you today. Can you please share with the Fast Leader Legion how they can connect with you?
Well, you can connect with me via email. My email address is pretty simple. It's my first letter of my first name and my last name. So it's cazzara@gmail.com. And you can also go to my Amazon page, the author page. And I have a Twitter account. That's my first and last name with an underscore between the two.
Carey Azzara, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom. The Fast Leader Legion honors you and thanks you for helping us get over the hump. Thank you for joining me on the Fast Leader Show today. For recaps, links from every show, special offers, and access to download and subscribe, if you haven't already, head on over to fastleader.net so we can help you move onward and upward faster.